Welcome back to Fossil Ridge Games. I am super excited to walk everybody through today a video on Star Wars Unlimited, specifically the Shadows of the Galaxy expansion. I'm going to walk you through the 3 new game mechanics, which include capture, bounties, and smuggle. I'm going to introduce you to the smuggle mechanic for Star Wars Unlimited, and the first question people ask is like, what is it? What is it doing? So cards with smuggle can actually be placed into your resources. So as an example, during the game, if I ever resource a card and I have a smuggle card in my hand, I can take that card and then place it into my resources. And you know what's fun about this mechanic? Once I have something in my resources with smuggle, at a later time, at a later turn, it can actually be returned to the game and I can use that. So as an example, if I placed Armed to the Teeth as a resource into my resource pile, I can actually play cards with smuggle from my resource pile by simply paying the cost on that card. So as an example, I'm going to flip this over, and please note it says smuggle and it has 4 resources and an aggression icon. And it says if this card is a resource, which this is right now, you may play it for its smuggle cost. Replace it with the top card of your deck. So that's pretty fantastic. So as an example, if I want to play this card from my resource pile, I can just pay its cost. So in this case, I'm going to have to pay 4 resources. So all I'd have to do is go 1, 2, 3, 4. I can take this card and then it goes into play. And then what I'm going to do is take the top card of my draw deck and I'm going to place it into my resource area exhausted. Because when resources come into play, they come in exhausted. Now, there is one caveat to smuggle that I do want to mention, and I saw this as kind of a little bit of an error when people were playing, specifically on the pre-release weekend. You can actually use the smuggle card as a resource to pay for itself, so that sounds a little bit strange. So in this example, we have still Armed to the Teeth, and we can play this out. But guess what? I can exhaust itself to pay for itself when it's coming into play. So as an example, I can exhaust these resources, and now this card comes into play, and then I'm going to replace it with another exhausted card off the top of my draw deck. So why is the smuggle mechanic important to Star Wars Unlimited? And one of the most apparent sort of benefits to this is mitigating and dealing with your opening hand. So as an example, I just put 6 cards out on the table to represent a player's opening hand. Now, how many times when you're putting your resources into your resource pile in Star Wars Unlimited, you kind of say to yourself, darn, I wish I didn't have to lose that card because I want to use it later. So what's kind of fun about the smuggle mechanic, it allows you to kind of save something for later. So as an example, if this was my opening hand, and we all know this, we have 2 resources to start that first turn. There's no way I'm going to be able to play this pirate battle tank until much later in the game. But as an example, it has smuggle at the bottom. And this thing is going to cost me 6 on the front end. And it's going to cost me 7 if it's been smuggled as a resource. But what's great is it's like I'm taking this card and I'm kind of holding it for later. So that's kind of a fantastic concept. That's a fantastic idea. I won't be able to play the battle tank initially, but I can put it into my resource pile, and then later in the game, when I have 7 resources, I can play it from my resource pile. So that's a fantastic advantage to using smuggle. Secondarily, I want you to think of your resource pile, if you have smuggled cards, as kind of like part of your hand. So think of it this way. You have a hand of cards that you're playing with over the course of the game. Then you have some held in reserve that are kind of secret that you can use to play out at a later time. That's a fantastic thing. So you can almost have some surprises set up in your resources that you can smuggle in later. And that's just a fantastic option. So if you ever get into a pinch and let's say maybe your hand is completely empty, you can say to yourself, oh, you know what? I've got some cards that I can smuggle in from my resources. So think of smuggle as just an extra way for you to deal and manage your resources. I think it's a great addition to the game, and I highly encourage everybody to kind of take a look at it and use the smuggle option. As a final note to smuggle, especially if you've played Star Wars Unlimited a bunch of times, you might not remember if you smuggled a card into your resources or not. So it is perfectly acceptable at any time for you to view any of the face down cards in your resource area at any time. So you can go ahead and just take these and take a look at them. So in this case, you could say like, oh, I think I have something in reserve for smuggle. You can look through your resources and check to see if you have something there. So you don't have to worry about relying upon your memory while using smuggle. You can look at your own resources at any time. A bounty has been placed on something and bounty hunters go out and collect a reward from it. And Star Wars Unlimited has this now in the game, and it's a fantastic and fun mechanism. So first we're going to look and see kind of what that means. And I just went ahead and put out several cards onto the table with bounty, and I'm going to zoom in on them a little bit later, but I'm going to focus on two different types of bounties so you can understand the concept. First up, you have the ability to place an upgrade. So as an example, we have Rich Reward. This is going to be sort of a generic card with a generic cost to bring into play, and it has a bounty. So since this is an upgrade, and it's kind of hard to see it right here, this is going to go onto any sort of unit. Sometimes they are specific. So you place the bounty onto the unit. Now, this is one type of card, so the top row right here are bounty cards. These are upgrades that are going to be placed onto a unit. On the bottom row, we have something different. Some of the cards that you have in your deck will have a bounty when you bring them into play, and that's kind of a little bit of a weird concept, but having a bounty is a detriment in this game. So if you ever lose a unit that has bounty on it, or it becomes captured, I'll walk through captured a little bit later, the opponent is going to gain something from that. They're going to gain some sort of benefit or reward actually from that. So first I'm going to talk about the upgrades, and then finally I'm going to walk you through what happens if you have cards in your deck with bounty on it itself. First I'm going to give you a quick example of what to do if you have an upgrade card and you want to place a bounty on something. So as an example, we talked about Rich Reward before. I'm going to take this card and I'm going to attach it to a unit. So as an example, let's say I'm fighting my opponent and my opponent has this Wookiee out onto the table, and I can play this upgrade onto the Wookiee. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to pay the cost. This is now an upgrade and it goes onto the Wookiee. So it's going to be placed as we normally do, with the text showing on the bottom. Please notice that now the Wookiee has a bounty on it. So what does that mean? If this Wookiee is eliminated from the game, so thus it's destroyed and it goes to the discard pile, or if it's captured, the bounty effect triggers on it. So as an example, let's say this Wookiee takes lethal damage, it's removed from play. What that means is that the person that defeated so the player that defeated the Wookiee with the bounty on it claims the reward. So that's kind of a strange concept, and I'm kind of talking about this a little bit abstractly. Most of your Star Wars Unlimited games are going to be two-player. You can play Twin Suns, and thus this adds a little bit of a different dynamic to the game. So whoever takes out the unit with the bounty on it is going to claim the reward. So in Twin Suns, this is going to add kind of a cool dynamic in which you incentivize every player at the table pretty much to take out the target you've just placed a bounty on. That's a really cool mechanic. So we'll get back to the Wookiee itself. It gets eliminated from the game. And then the person that eliminated the unit says, give an experience token to each of up to 2 units. They would cash in on this reward. So that's pretty cool. Now, the other thing that can happen is that the card can be captured itself. So there are different capture mechanics. In the subsequent video clips, I'm going to kind of show you what that means. So I'm just going to throw a couple cards on the table really quick with capture mechanics that I'm going to go through in a subsequent clip. So as an example, if this card is captured, it's going to be removed from the player's area, and then it's going to trigger the bounty itself. So that's kind of a cool way to think about things. So next up, I'm going to just kind of highlight something really quick. There are some cards, and there's quite a few of them in the second expansion, that key off of the concept of bounty. So as an example, Jango Fett, it says, while attacking a unit with a bounty, this unit gets a +3 attack, and it gains Overwhelm. So a lot of the bounty hunter cards in this set will become enhanced, or it triggers some sort of special ability if you do have a bounty out on the table, which is fantastic. So now that I've talked about the concept of placing an upgrade on a card, now I'm going to talk about the concept of cards that are in your deck that just have bounty in general. Now we're going to talk about cards that have a bounty on them already when they come into play. So as an example, we have the Fugitive Wookiee, and its bounty is exhaust a unit. And then we also have the Outlaw kind of flying saucer spaceship that you see with some of Hondo's people. This one is interesting too because it says put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So you can have cards in your deck that are a little bit more powerful than what you would normally see. So having a 2-cost 3/3 has a little bit better stats than what you would normally see. And then when we look at this flying saucer spaceship, you can see that it has a 3/5 and its cost is only 3. So especially this one on the right-hand side of the screen, that's really cheap to have a 3/5 unit come into play for only 3 resources. So that's amazing. Now the downside to it is it has a bounty immediately when it comes into play. So what that means is that you have something in your area that is immediately going to be a nice tasty target for your opponent. So if you were to bring either of these 2 cards into play, this kind of incentivizes your opponent to destroy these units or capture them to cash in on that bounty. So one of the big disconnects I see is that when people place bounty cards in their own deck, they think that, you know, they get the benefit from that, and that's actually not the case. So when you're doing deck building and you see anything with a bounty on it, please understand that if this is eliminated or captured from your area, your opponent cashes in on it and you do not get any sort of reward at all. So I saw that as a little bit of a disconnect with deck building when you're kind of putting decks together for the first time in the second set. Next, I'm going to walk you through the capture mechanic, and this is going to simulate some sort of unit being captured by another one and sort of being escorted from that point onward. So as an example, let's say I've got Jango Fett and he is fighting this yellow and blue deck, and I'm going to go ahead and simulate 2 different captures so you can kind of understand what's happening. So as an example, Jango Fett is in the play area, but also in that deck we have the Discerning Veteran, and this says, when played, this unit captures an enemy non-leader ground unit, and then in parentheses it says, put the captured card face down under this unit until the unit leaves play. So that's kind of a generic capture effect. And then this one is going to be an event that you play that also does the same thing. So it says, choose a friendly unit. It captures an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same or less than it. If it is a friendly bounty hunter unit, it's going to gain a shield. So this one is going to have an additional effect, and then it also has the same caveat at the bottom for a capture. So those are kind of 2 different capture cards that you can look at. And here's Mr. Jango. And in this case, we're going to play Relentless Pursuit. It's going to go to our discard pile. And that says a friendly unit is going to capture an enemy. In this case, we're going to take the Wookiee on the left, and now it becomes a captured card. So all we're going to do is we're going to take this thing and we're going to flip it over, and we're going to put it onto the table, and then Jango is going to be sort of escorting it, so it's going to go face down underneath Jango. So kind of conceptually what that means is that Jango has captured the Wookiee, and that he is, you know, kind of guarding or protecting it. So one of the rules in the game is that you can have a card guard as many other cards as you want in the game. So Jango could technically have 1 or more captured or guarded cards. So you're going to see guarded now start appearing on a lot of your Star Wars Unlimited cards. Guarded just simply means that Jango is escorting a captured card. So conceptually, what does that mean? That if Jango is eliminated and Jango's removed from the game, or maybe he's even captured himself, then this card is freed and released. It goes back to the owner of it and it comes back into play. So when it comes back into play, it's going to come back into play exhausted, and it's going to come back into play with full life, with full hit points. So that's a little bit of an odd concept, but we're going to take that a step further, and I'm going to walk you through a second sort of capture. So we've kind of talked about this. Now we're going to talk about Django capturing this fugitive Wookiee on the other side of the screen. This is going to be a little bit more complex. So first up, we're going to use our Relentless Pursuit again. This is going to allow Django to capture the Wookiee on the right-hand side of the screen. This time it's going to be a little bit more complex and complicated. So when you capture a card, all of the damage on the card is going to come off and all of the upgrades. So as an example, I went ahead and made this just a little bit more easy to understand. So we've got a shield token on this thing, and then we also have an experience token on this thing as well, plus we have damage. So if Django captures this Wookiee, we're going to remove the damage from this, and it comes off. The fugitive Wookiee is going to flip over. It's going to go under Django. Django is now guarding the Wookiee, and then any upgrades are then discarded. So here's kind of the disconnect I see with new players. They think that the upgrades go with the Wookiee underneath, and that's not true. Same thing with the damage tokens. The Wookiee was damaged when it was captured, but guess what? The damage tokens don't stay on the card. The damage tokens are discarded instead. So this is kind of an interesting mechanic in which then if Django's eliminated, this Wookiee comes back into play, but none of the attachments that were on it originally still apply, and the damage on it also does not apply. Another thing that is easy to forget, and I fall into this trap quite a bit, is that since these mechanics are new, I don't necessarily always remember to trigger everything. So as an example, Relentless Pursuit says that if a bounty hunter captures a card, so if Django captures that Wookiee, then it can trigger an additional effect. So in this case, it's going to then place a shield onto Django. So just be aware that some of these chains of events are a little bit more complex and complicated when you're adding the capture mechanic in, and just be aware that you can get some additional benefits from some of your cards. So just kind of take it kind of slow when you're first playing these new cards, and make sure that you're utilizing everything. Another thing that is a little bit strange is that maybe sometimes your captured cards will have a when played effect. Well, guess what? The Wookiee was played a long time ago when it first came into play. So it's not being played again. It really kind of just changed state. It went from active to sort of inactive when it was captured, and now it's going back to active in the game. It wasn't played again. So the rulebook says that your when played effects do not trigger again when the Wookiee potentially comes into play. And you'll kind of understand what this means. There's a small limited number of cards in the game that have when played abilities. These will not trigger again when the state of the card changes from sort of active to inactive. To summarize, the capture effects in this game are pretty strong. You're basically taking something from your opponent's play area, you're capturing it and rendering it ineffective until the person guarding the card is eliminated potentially. So these cards, in my opinion, are very strong. And if you mix a lot of capture mechanics into your deck with a lot of unit elimination cards, you have a really potent deck and a really easy way to deal with your enemy. So be really cognizant of the capture cards. I think they are very, very strong in the set. I think they are very impactful to your deck building. So I just want to give a quick summary. In this video, we talked about 3 different effects: smuggle, bounties, and capture effects that were added to Star Wars Unlimited. I really feel that these mechanics add a lot of depth to the game. They're also very thematic with the Star Wars universe. The second set brings a host of underworld scum and bounty hunters to the game, and I absolutely love that concept. I love everything about it. I feel that the second set is very strong. I love the new mechanics. Thematically, it feels absolutely wonderful. I also love how kind of like with the first set, they were able to mix and match cards from different parts of the Star Wars universe, different timelines, different factions. It feels really good. So from the perspective of, is the second set fantastic? Is it wonderful? I'm going to say yes. I think it adds a lot of depth to the game. It adds a lot of fun. And I encourage people to check it out, especially if you're fans of Star Wars Unlimited and you liked the first set. I think the second set is very, very strong, very fun, and it's a great time to play, quite honestly. I want to thank everybody for joining me today, and as always, have fun gaming.